What's going on?
You're the closer.
Is that what they call me?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You closed with Snoop yesterday. We're closing with you today.
I like it. How's everybody doing?
Good. When did you get into town?
I got into town yesterday.
Okay.
I had to go do first take and all of that stuff, take care of some business, and now I am here.
Okay.
Well, I got to fly out of town and do a first take from Tennessee State, HBCU, tomorrow. Yeah.
When you started your career, being a columnist at a national newspaper was probably the most influential job you could have in sports media. You had talk radio, ESPN blew up. You're now the most recognizable sports talk person sports media personality, I would say. How do you see your business changing with streaming and social media and what you have to do to sort of stay on top?
Well, you've got to diversify. You've got to make sure that you're paying attention to what the audience wants. You have to understand that who your audience is and where they are. The audience that listens to you on radio might be different than the audience that's watching you and listening to you on your podcast and your YouTube show. Might be different than the audience that's watching you at 10 o'clock in the morning on First Take. For me personally, it's not that challenging from the standpoint that working at ESPN, there's always been a potpourri of shows. What you saw from me on First Take might be a little bit different than what you saw from me on NBA Countdown. It might be a little bit different than what you saw from me when we had Outside the Lines. It might be a little bit different than when you see me on the Sports Center. A lot of times also the personality that you're working with comes into play. Somebody that's hosting the 6 o'clock Sports Center might be different than somebody that's hosting the 11 o'clock, might be different than somebody that's hosting the overnight. You're coming on before games, so you have a certain attitude. And then another show, you're coming on post game. So it's a different attitude because you saw a different, so you got some highlights. You saw a different level of excitement that you want to ingratiate yourself with and gravitate to. And so I've always been about the business of making sure that I was multifaceted in my presentation and my delivery, and just to make sure that I'm appealing to the audience and being mindful and cognizant of who actually is out there watching at a particular moment in time in the day or what have you, and what you need to do and what you need to deliver, because everybody's looking for something different.
Yeah. Where do you think the most people watch you now? Is it on ESPN? Is it YouTube? Is it some other social network?
Well, I would tell you, once upon a time, I would have easily said it's ESPN, and you can easily say that now because of the success of First Take. I mean, when you think about the audience, at 10 o'clock in the morning when people are at work or in school or whatever, we're averaging nearly 500,000 viewers live over video. I personally average over 2 billion views a year, so I know that. And then that's just with First Take. That doesn't take into account Sports Center and NBA Countdown. And then now that I've got my YouTube show, I've had it for about 18 months now. I've got about 877,000 subscribers. This month alone, I did over 18 million views. I've had over 2.2 million watched hours and stuff like that. And so you're looking at those numbers and you're saying, well, that's just 3 days a week. And that's me talking about pop culture and entertainment with the P. Diddy scandal or whatever. And, it's not me getting into sports as heavily. It's not even getting into politics as the election draws near, especially because there were times that I was talking about Trump. I was talking about Kamala Harris. I was on the air 8-9 months ago saying Joe Biden needed to step down. It just ain't there anymore. I was saying that. I didn't say it enjoyingly. I said, you certainly don't want to be denigrating the president of the United States or anything like that, but I saw what I saw. And so for me, talking to that audience, knowing that they're not familiar. At one time, they weren't familiar with that, but then those algorithms kick in. You talk about it enough, all of a sudden your name comes up. You make headlines, and then they attach you to those subject matters, and then before you know it, you have an even bigger audience that you never anticipated. And so I think the exciting part for me is the answer to that question is ESPN, but it was definitively and very quickly ESPN.
And now you can
say a year ago, and now I'm saying, it's changing.
Right. It's
changing. They still watching me on ESPN, but the audience is growing on YouTube.
Does ESPN get upset if you talk about politics?
No. I mean, they did once upon a time. And I think that Jimmy Pitaro, the president of ESPN, he came on in 2018, and when he took over for John Skipper, who had exited, he was on the record saying that we need to veer away from politics, and there was a whole bunch of my colleagues that were very upset with me for co-signing that mandate. but I co-signed it. And even all these years later, I'm here to defend the president of ESPN at that time, because we had gotten so political that we went away from giving the audience what it came to expect. You're coming to expect sports, and then we felt it was perfectly okay to just get into stuff that expanded beyond sports. You had the Colin Kaepernick protesting and kneeling. We saw the President Trump at the time hijack the narrative and turn it into some issue involving patriotism and all of this other stuff, when it really wasn't about that. It was about him getting back at owners who wouldn't let him become an owner in 2014 for the Buffalo Bills. And you saw all of this other stuff going on. And, you know, we got away from giving the audience what the audience came to see. And I'm a businessman, and my attitude is, what do the patrons want? What are their expectations? What did they come to see? And if you know what that is, and you sign your name on the dotted line, committing to giving the audience that, then you owe it to them to give them that. And when Jimmy Pitaro was making the declaration that we weren't doing that to the degree that we once did, he was absolutely right. But once we got back to doing what we do, sports, politics, and all of that stuff in between, social commentary and stuff, it intertwines with the world of sports. It's inescapable. And now we get that. But 6 years ago or so, they didn't get it like they do now.
Right. But I suppose there's a reason you're doing that on your own as opposed to on the airwaves.
Well, again, because I'm a businessman and I'm thinking about the business of Stephen A. Smith. I'm not thinking about Stephen A. Smith, the employee. I'm thinking about straight shooter production, straight shooter media, and the kind of aspirations that I have. That doesn't mean that I want to go away, that I want to stop doing sports, that I want to stop working for the people that I work for. But they are keenly aware of the fact that I have a strong desire to expand. You would see me on News Nation a week before the election night doing a town hall. You see me on CNN. You see me on Fox News. You've seen me being interviewed by political commentators and what have you. I like doing that. You've seen me talking about P. Diddy one minute, Will Smith, Chris Rock the next, and so on and so forth. I'm one of those guys that wherever the pulse of the people are at, what is on their mind and what they're most interested in, I like to be a part of that dialogue and a part of that conversation. And so when you come to me, graduating from an HBCU, Winston-Salem State, struggling the way that I did to get to where I am, climbing up the charts from the New York Daily News as a high school reporter to the Philadelphia Inquirer, working on TV, CNN, SSI, to Fox Sports, to ESPN. I bust my ass to get to where I am. And I don't want anyone telling me, we're pigeonholing you in this box and we have you in this corner and that's where you belong and that's where you'll stay. I'm not rolling like that. That's not who I am and that's not who I'm going to be.
Okay, that's a good cue I want to read you a quote. You were profiled by GQ in 2019.
Okay, in 2019. I don't remember, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. Your former colleague Max Kellerman had a quote about you.
Okay.
Stephen A. is never going to be happy. That's why he's successful. When you're on the top, when you're on top, the reason you're there is because you are a chronically dissatisfied person.
I think that's a bit excessive. I think that if you know me, if you know my inner circle, my family, my friends, my loved ones, I am a very happy man. I'm living a pretty good life.
Seems like it.
You know,
working real hard.
I work real hard because I love to work. I get that from my mama. God rest her soul, and I'm very proud of that. To me, I'm off when the job is done. I believe in excellence. I believe in doing the best that I possibly can do and exhausting every means necessary to be the best that I can be. But in the same breath, don't get it twisted. I know how to have a good time, and I have a good time quite often. It's just that, when people work with you, there's a level of intensity that I bring to the table. Nick Saban has one of my favorite quotes. Mediocre people don't like winners, and winners don't like mediocre people. And I listened to that, and I nodded my head in affirmation, because you can work with people, and I'm certainly not talking about Max Kellerman here, but you can work with people, as I have in my career, and you run across people that they're fine with getting by. They're fine with punching that proverbial clock, turning it in, making sure they did their job, and that's all they got to do. No, there's a result at the end. We're in the ratings and revenue business. Are we winning? I don't care who I'm working for. This is one of the reasons that I believe that I'm one of the greatest people to work with, because I think about my partners just as much as I think about myself. Are we winning? If I'm winning, but you're losing, we're losing, because we have not achieved success for the both of us.
Right.
We know what the mandate is. And when you run across people that don't care about whether or not somebody else is winning, and all they're concerned about is the fact that they got theirs, they're very easy to spot. They're not difficult to locate. And when you have to work with them every day and you're committed to success, that's a very difficult proposition to partake of on each passing day. And I'm one of those people that I may not say much, but I want you to be uncomfortable with me. I want you to be uncomfortable around me. I want you to be around me and, you want to get away from me as fast as you can. If you're mediocre and you satisfied with being mediocre and you don't give a damn and you don't care about the results, you don't care about winning, I want you uncomfortable. I really, really do. People like the late, great Kobe Bryant, God rest his soul. You knew his mentality. Michael Jordan has been a friend of mine for years. You knew his mentality. I mean, these are people that were winners. And I believe in being a winner and exhausting yourself to do it.
I'm curious, you made the comment about people who are out for themselves, and I'm going to preface it by saying that's not what I'm implicating for you here, but you're in the middle of negotiating a really big new contract, right?
Okay.
At the same time that ESPN is firing a bunch of people. Do you see how that might rub some people the wrong way?
I can see that. I don't give a Let me answer that question why. That is one question. I'm not offended by the question, so I want to make sure you understand that. But that is a question that I'm not going to take from anybody. And I'm going to tell you why. I can't count the amount of examples where I saw people getting laid off, and then I see somebody come up right behind and get some contract. Business does business. You never know what's behind the goal of a business per se. What you do know is the work that you put in. If you're smart enough, what value comes with that work. And then at the same time, you also pride yourself in being very, very reasonable. I haven't, and I'm not going to talk about my contract negotiations with ESPN. They are ongoing. I think the talks have been very pleasant. I think we're making progress. We'll see what happens. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, I've got decisions to make because I got a future to think about. But I'm not going to sit up here like a baby and a child, understanding the world of business and what it entails, and whine and moan about whatever. At the end of the day, here's what it comes down to. The industry has changed. The people who are not paying attention to the changes that have taken place are going to get lost in the shuffle. It's not what it used to be. There was a metamorphosis that kicked in, a change that took place when I was in the newspaper industry and they were transitioning to .com, social media. The advent of social media came about. You had people that were starting podcasts. Newspapers was getting left by the wayside, and you had newspaper journalists whining about the industry. Well, are you blind? You are reporters. You see what they're doing. You got to come up with something else, okay? Sports radio. That had grown, that had blown up. But podcasting came about. Why? Because people didn't want to punch a clock and have to watch a show or listen to the show at one specific time. They wanted the flexibility of being able to call up your content whenever they wanted to, et cetera, et cetera. You saw how the business was changing. What are you going to do about it? Same thing with television. Now we've got streaming. Linear television is supposed to be dying. I will remind you, linear content is not. Linear television is. That means somebody doesn't want to have to buy a big-ass TV to watch it in their house when they get home from work or whatever. They want to be able to watch it on their phone. They want to be able to watch it on their iPad. They want to be able to watch it on their laptop. This is what they want to be able to do. You have to know these things. In the process of knowing these things, you build an audience. You build content. You're a content provider. You're doing all of these things. And then the people that you work for benefit from that. They master how to monetize it, or at least they hope to. And they go about the business of putting it out there so folks can get paid. And then when it's your time, you're supposed to act oblivious and ignorant to all of that and say, let me think about everybody else but myself, when I've been working all of these years and didn't ask for, and my contract wasn't up. I didn't ask for a contract extension. I didn't ask somebody to rip it up or whatever. My deal was there. You're locked in until June 2025. I've honored my word. I showed up, I performed, I did what I needed to do. And so now a negotiation takes place, and hopefully the two sides can come to an accord. And if we can't, we can't. But business is business. I harbor no animosity whatsoever. All I ask for anybody out there that's looking at me is to understand, just like a business has a right to look out for its business, Stephen A. has a right to look out for Stephen A.'s business.
Without getting into the particulars, it seems like you want to stay at ESPN, right? That would be your preference?
In a perfect world, Jimmy Pitaro's a great boss. He's a good man. It's hard when you look at the world and how divisive it is, how sleazy it can be, and what have you, to run across a man that you genuinely like. You know, that's how I feel about Jimmy Pitaro. Bob Iger's another level. I revere this man. I idolize Bob Iger. I've known him for years, and I think that he's a marvelous leader. And what he has done for the Disney family, to be in-house and to see the obstacles and to see how he's maneuvered his way through that terrain for that 16-year run before he retired, and what he had to facilitate cleaning up once he got back, despite so many reports and troubles and all of this other stuff. To have a relationship with somebody like that where you see him give you advice about you personally, about your personal affairs, about things that have nothing to do with the job, but it's going to help you grow as a human being and as a man. I can't say enough about him. You don't have that every day. And so on that level, when I think about that, I think about a Burke Magnus, who I've got a good relationship with, the Dave Roberts, who I've had a long-standing relationship with. Yeah, on that level, you don't want to leave when you have people like that. But they are fully aware that while I have a desire to still do some of the things that I do, I also have a desire to do my own thing. And I'm not going to let anything stop me.
So if you, in this new deal, you would not want to fold the stuff you're doing outside into the contract. You want to make sure that you have the right to do stuff outside.
Absolutely. And I will not do anything that disallows that.
And is there anything you're not doing now that you want to add to the plate?
No, I mean, it's not so much that. What happens is that once you have a taste of success, everybody wants a piece of the action. And, well, there's pieces of the action I can't have as somebody that's worked there, even though I've contributed to the success of what they have. So just like they achieved the success on their own based on their creative and what they built, what I've created and what I'm building, I want for myself.
Right.
And so, you know, that's really what it is. Again, it's the talks are going well. There's nothing bad going on, despite the reports and stuff like that. I'm alarmed at how ignorant folks are.
I don't think the reports are that things are going bad. The reports are that, you know,
well, they're saying,
they offer X, you want Y.
Well, they've been wrong. How about that? Okay, they've been wrong. But I let them do that, and because I like to see as a journalist. I've been a journalist. Yes, I'm a personality and all this stuff, but New York Daily News, Philadelphia Inquirer. I've been a journalist for nearly 30 years.
Right.
And there's a whole bunch of people that write that are still in those press boxes when I was there. I know who they are. I know how they think. I know what they're going to say before they say it. I know who they're talking to. I know who leaks information to them. I know this, okay? They're not fooling the damn soul. I just let them do it because I want to see who's going to. Because I like to see who's going to have the audacity to smile in my face when you say something. I had somebody, I'm not going to mention his name because I don't want to put him on Front Street, but I had somebody write a story about a colleague of mine and something negative that they had to say about me. And that bastard was in front of my face.
I assume we're talking about Pat McAfee.
No, not at all. I swear to you. I said, I'm not talking about my colleague. I'm talking about the reporter.
No, I know. I thought the story was about...
No, it's nothing about Pat McAfee.
Got it.
And so that reporter was in front of my face 3 weeks earlier, interviewing us when we had the town hall in front of the media. Never mentioned a word about what the person said. Not a syllable. And then I read the paper, and I'm like, he ain't asked me about this. But you took that quote and you ran with that. You know, you watch stuff, and I'm in the business, and I've been in the business for years, so I know this. And when you are doing certain things that I think cross the line of ethics and what have you, I like to know who you are. I'm not going to do anything to you. You're not worth it. But I like to know who you are, just so I can look at you. And when you look at me, you'll know, I know who you are. That's all.
You mentioned being a journalist. You've probably interviewed just about every famous athlete on the planet, at least in certain sports. Is there one that you find the most challenging to interview?
The most challenging interview? I don't find anybody the most challenging interview as long as they know how to talk. As long as you know how to talk, I feel I can interview a cockroach, to be honest with you. I can talk to anybody.
Is there someone you haven't interviewed that you want to?
I want to interview Barack Obama. I want to interview Barack Obama. I want him to sit in front of me and defend some of the people he defends to my face. I want him to take some of the positions that he takes. I'm not going to say I don't want to interview Donald Trump. It would be fascinating because, you see, how can you say I'm going to be respectful, but in the same breath, I'm not going to let you BS? You're not going to get away with it.
Right.
I would try that. He's not going to be able to look at me and say, you didn't say hello. How are you? Before you ask me these questions like he did at the National Association of Black Journalists. He's not going to be able to do that. But definitely him. That would come to mind. And, you know, that's really about it.
Politicians.
I'd love to interview Benjamin Netanyahu. Wouldn't bother me at all. I'd love to do that interview. I would love that. Ted Cruz is crazy in his own way, but I'd like to talk to him because he speaks his mind, you know. And so all right, I like talking to folks who are unafraid to say what they feel based on their facts. That doesn't bother me. I'm bothered if you ignore the facts. I'm bothered if you do that on purpose. But if you believe something and you have the facts that back up your belief, let the people decide. Tell them what it is and let them decide.
So you mentioned Obama. What are the things that you want to see him stand up behind?
No, I just think that, you know, Barack Obama is a person, obviously, profound respect. First black president of the United States of America, wonderful first family, best first lady I've ever seen, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, when I think, I'm a centrist, and I think the world is cyclical. Sometimes you need certain policies, sometimes you need certain others. And when people are dogged in their beliefs and they're one-sided and there's not much room to leverage, to budge, I don't know how beneficial that is for us as a society. Think if we, as American citizens and we're human beings, were that way. This is what I believe. There's not a damn thing you can do to change my mind. This is what I believe. I'm not changing. Where are we going? I'm not budging either. Where are we going? I think one of the problems when we look at the world of politics today is that they're not doing any work. All their work is during the campaign. Once they're in office, they don't have to do a damn thing. Do you realize they don't even have to read policy? And they can literally just say, I'm going to vote along with the side that I'm on. We got to march lockstep with one another. We're Republican, we're Democrat. This is where we got to vote. Really, yes. That's what they're doing.
Well, that's a politics issue. That doesn't strike me as an Obama issue.
No, that's not Obama. That's not an Obama issue. I'm not saying that is. I'm saying talking to him about a climate and a culture that some people would credit him towards. Some people would tell you his presidency caused just as much as divisiveness as anybody else. I don't believe that. But I'm fascinated by people who believe that and why, and I'm fascinated as to what he would have to say about that.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did.
I think I did.
Yeah, you did. Okay. You familiar with the stock market?
Not really. I have financial people about that. I know I monitor my money. I know that.
Are you familiar with the concept of buying, selling, and holding a stock?
Yeah.
You can buy something if you believe in it. You sell it if you don't. You hold it if you're
Yes.
Can I give you some sports and see where you're at on them?
Sure, we could do that.
Okay. Let's do 3 older sports: baseball, boxing, and golf.
Buying or selling?
Buy, sell, hold, those 3.
I would sell boxing. I don't like what I'm seeing. The promoters have ruined the sport. They need somebody like Dana White overseeing the sport so you can give us the fights we want to see when we want to see them, as opposed to dudes being able to avoid one another because they might get knocked out, and then obviously it will compromise their revenue generating ability. But we also need to do a better job of taking care of the boxers. I think Capitol Hill has to get involved in that regard. I would tell you that I'm buying baseball.
Having a good year.
And well, it's not just that. I think the rules changes, the pitch count, the shifting, the clock, the game has sped up. We're seeing more athleticism that's been incorporated in the sport of baseball. I think that's going to contribute to diversifying the sport. Now, it was only about 6% black a couple of years ago. It's crawling up, but I think that you'll see more athleticism coming into the sport. I think that's important. And what was the other sport?
Golf. You're holding golf.
Golf. Look, I know Tiger Woods was there. And I understand it's a meritocracy and you got to be able to play. But there is nothing about golf that says to me I'm invited. Nothing. I mean, it costs a boatload of money to be a member of a club. You understand? You got to buy your golf clubs. You understand what I'm saying? You're losing balls all the time. They ain't cheap. You got to have a caddy. You got to have a cart because you're not trying to walk 18 holes. And, it's at a country club that, the only time you really see black folks there is they're working. That's what it was for a long period of time. And I understand that Tiger Woods contributed to diversifying it to some degree, but there's just nothing about the sport, from the people who cover it, the people who talk about it, the people who participate in it. There is nothing about the sport that says to me, black folks, come on in. I don't see that in golf.
Yeah.
So I'd sell that.
Okay. Selling 2, 1 buy. Good. 3 sports on the rise: UFC, WNBA, soccer.
Well, soccer's international. Soccer's not going anywhere. It's on the rise in America. Yeah, Messi in Florida, that's nice. But the bottom line is, as long as the NFL exists here, you're behind the curve because, football is football in America. NFL, it ain't soccer. So I would say that it's on the rise. It is what it is globally. On America, it's an incremental rise. I think that when you look at the UFC, I think the UFC is very popular. I think Dana White has done a marvelous job in growing the sport the way that he has. It's great to see great matches. I just think they got to get more, and it won't happen per se. But I think that something that would go a long way towards elevating the success of the UFC is to incorporate the knockout even more. America loves knockouts.
Yeah, when you watch him,
we don't want to see
and
submissions.
Yeah.
We don't want to see guillotine chokeholds. Yeah, all right, that's fine. Wow, okay, but you don't want to see somebody. I saw John Bones Jones get into the octagon one day. He maneuvered left, maneuvered right, grabbed this guy by both of his arms and choked him with his own arms. It was over in 45 seconds. That's not box office. But Conor McGregor knocking out Aldo in 13 seconds, you still saw that knockout.
Yeah.
So it's what Americans appeal to. So I would say that's going to still be on the rise. Plus, boxing has helped the rise of the UFC because of the organizational structure that Dana White has made sure to ensure, or rather was incorporated, and I think that helps them. Now, what was your third sport?
WNBA.
Definitely on the rise. I think the women have done a marvelous job, but we're not going to run from the elephant in the room. Caitlin Clark, you better recognize. Average 17,000 in attendance at home, 15,000 on the road. Attendance increased by 319%. Merchandise sales up like 450%. Not most, not all, but there was some jealousy. There was some resentment. And it's very, very understandable. You've got sisters that were in the WNBA that toiled through that terrain, that bust their tails to be the best that they could possibly be and uplift the sport, and couldn't get the notoriety, couldn't get the television coverage, couldn't get the media coverage, couldn't get the sponsors and advertisers bought in, couldn't do any of that. Well, you know something? Caitlin Clark changed all of that. 2 weeks on the job, she had him on chartered flights. 2 weeks, okay? Attendance soared. WNBA draft ratings, opening night ratings on ABC, et cetera, et cetera. A rising tide lifts all boats. Magic Johnson and Larry Bird were champions. But when Michael Jordan came along, they said, yo, this brother different. And we gonna ride this wave because that benefits us all. I think that a lot of the ladies with the WNBA were slow to get to that point. And that's what hurt them. But I think they're here. The ratings for the playoffs have been great. But nothing like Caitlin Clark. She is a galvanizing force of nature to be reckoned with. And I think that she has done wonders and will continue to do wonders for women's basketball. I think it was stupid for Team USA to not have her on the team, because you should have had her on there, because she would have blew up the popularity of the sport globally, which would have assisted in the sport growing even more. And I think that that was a missed opportunity, but I don't think it's going away. It shouldn't go away. And I think the WNBA is going to be here to stay.
Okay, we'll end on NBA then. What's your finals prediction?
Well, right now, I think the favorite has to be the Boston Celtics. I would tell you that a lot of people are talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're the best team in the West. I find it hard to count out Jokic in Denver. I just find that very, very difficult to believe. And I'm not sleeping on Minnesota with Julius Randle, Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, etc. If I had to pick, I would tell you it would be Boston versus the Denver Nuggets. But I have a license to be fluid. Fluid.
You got a long ways to go.
Yeah, license to be fluid.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.